I am excited today to share about one of our aligned sponsors, Dr. Tung's innovative natural oral care designed with cleaner ingredients and real results. From smart floss to tongue cleaners and wellness-focused essentials, Dr. Tung's helps support healthier smiles for the whole family. Visit drtungs.com and enjoy 15% off your first purchase. Welcome, Pod Pal, to a super interesting episode today where I share my results on a minerals and metals test. It's the kind where you send in your hair, which we'll hear more about how that works and why in this episode with Dr. Stephen Cabral, who is a board certified naturopathic physician. And I got some blood work back in the fall that did show a deficiency, which we talk about in this episode. That got me thinking about blood work. You know, we've had an episode with two integrative practitioners about that same question. And so when Dr. Cabral's team reached out about doing a podcast related to the minerals and metals test, I thought that sounds fun, right? You guys definitely want to hear about my lab test, don't you? I certainly did, as something really interesting. And also love Dr. Cabral's work. He's the author of The Rain Barrel Effect, as well as the most recent book, Personomics, where he's talking about individualized medicine. And it was great to get to know him in this episode. You'll get to know him too. He actually has made several trips to India and done some of his clinical internships in Ayurveda clinics in India. So as I was reading his book, listening to his podcast, sort of following his work, everything he's recommending, there's all this Ayurveda stuff in there, like about your bedtime, 10 p.m., you know, so many of the things that we talk about on this podcast, he's also talking about. So I thought, this is cool. I like the way this person is approaching medicine. And so today, some kind of surprising results about my blood work. And he also goes into and explains how this particular test works. It's really interesting. It also gives you information about your stress levels, which I'm always interested in learning about. The body, as I'm sure you are too. So let's dork out about the body right now in today's episode with Dr. Stephen Cabral. Don't miss this. Welcome to Everyday Ayurveda with Kate, a podcast that translates ancient wisdom for modern lives. I'm your host, Kate O'Donnell. I've been living and teaching Ayurveda, India's traditional medicine, for over 25 years, and I've authored 4 best-selling books on bringing Ayurveda practices into our lives. If you're tired of battling digestive issues, hormonal imbalances, menopause symptoms, or are seeking a deeper spiritual connection and purpose, you're in the right place. This podcast is for you, offering practical, accessible advice to help you heal through diet, optimize your daily routines, and enhance your overall well-being. Follow this space for insights on a diet that heals, strategies for better digestion, sleep, hormone health, and direction for finding a deep sense of meaning and purpose. Join me, my pod people, for this empowering journey into self-care and self-discovery. Together, we'll explore how to bring balance and vitality into your everyday life. Let's do this. Welcome to the podcast, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
It's great to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
I'm really excited about this conversation and kind of your parallel work in naturopathy as well as Ayurveda. So I'm going to guess that a lot of our listeners, maybe they've heard of you, but aren't so familiar with you and your work. So my first question is, how'd you get into medicine and clinical work?
Yeah, it's funny when I get asked that. I grew up in Medford, Massachusetts, which is about 6 miles outside of Boston. And, there's no such thing as, naturopathic medicine or really anything of the realm except conventional medicine. So when I was little growing up, you would go to your pediatrician, you'd get your amoxicillin, or eventually it was your erythromycin or whatever it might be that you would get when you had a cold. And so that's how I grew up. I grew up eating Fruity Pebbles for breakfast and drinking Kool-Aid and doing all those things back in the 80s. And what happened was when I was 17 years old, that was the time that my body finally broke. So for many people, it's not till their 40s or 50s where they get an autoimmune issue, or women in our practice going through perimenopause, men start to maybe go lower in testosterone, there's more inflammation. For me, it happened much faster. And so something I call the rain barrel effect, my rain barrel overflooded, and I didn't know why at the time. And unfortunately, I woke up that day at 17 years old, senior of high school. It's supposed to be the time of your life. And I had swollen lymph nodes all over my body, about the size of golf balls. They were huge, difficult to swallow in my neck. And that started a 2 year trip to all the best specialists in Boston. And they couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. They saw that my white blood cells were extremely low, below a 2. So they assumed I had cancer. Did all the different cancer screenings and it was negative. Fortunately, again, very fortunate for that. So they said, well, you must have some type of immune deficiency disease like HIV. And, HIV was big in the 80s. I wouldn't have had HIV, but just saying like it's something to check for. Okay, I don't have that. So they were dumbfounded. They didn't know. Again, these are Harvard educated, brilliant doctors, Boston University, Tufts, you name it. And they just didn't know what to do. And so they said, you had to get worse in order for us to help you, which was a wild thing to say, meaning
Mm.
they needed more to go off of than the typical blood work they ran. And so it was around that time that a neighbor told us about a naturopathic doctor. And again, they didn't really call it back then, but a doctor from overseas, and they were doing more naturopathic medicine. And they introduced me to this whole thing called functional medicine or integrative health. And they ran a few different labs that looked at first my hormones, such as cortisol, throughout the day. And they saw I wasn't producing any, which is really odd. And then
Mhm.
they looked at a minerals and metals test, and they saw I was flatlined on my electrolytes, which we'll talk about in a moment on your labs. And luckily, your labs don't look like mine. And I wasn't producing any stress hormones. And so I brought that back to my conventional medicine doctor. Then they started doing advanced testing. Lo and behold, I have autoimmune conditions like rheumatoid arthritis. You're not supposed to get that at 17 years old.
No.
Type 2 diabetes, Addison's disease, which is the inability to produce cortisol. I had POTS, I had mast cell activation syndrome, I had debilitating allergies and asthma. I had that all growing up, and a host of other things, insomnia. And so, of course, they put me on a handful of medication. And you know what? Felt a little better being on that handful of medication, just enough to be able to get through college. But here's the thing. I knew even back then, without really the internet, that this was no way to live. Like I was masking real symptoms. And to make a long story short, over the next 8 years, I went to almost 100 different practitioners, including the 2 dozen medical doctors I was visiting for specialists, till finally meeting my mentor, Dr. Pete, who helped put together all of the books I had read and all the great mentors using naturopathic medicine, Ayurveda, and understanding my unique genetics. Within 6 months, I was completely better. No more Addison's disease, which they said I wasn't going to be able to heal, rheumatoid arthritis, no more type 2 diabetes, etc. And I could talk about that process, but essentially, I just want to share with people that no matter how bad you have it, there is always hope. And that there is always an underlying root cause as well. It's typically not one thing, it's usually multiple. And when you fix those, the body can begin to heal because we do not heal our body, we put our bodies in position to heal.
Yeah. And there's something I think about having these different perspectives. Like you had the naturopathy, you had the Western medicine, you had the Ayurveda that gives you this ability to zoom out and view the body as a system. And that's where you see, oh, like, because if you walked away with 10 different diagnoses for very serious things, you'd think, okay, I'm just going to die now. you know,
Yes, and I thought
but
that. I mean, they
I'm
scared
sure.
me to believing that my life wouldn't be very long. If you have Addison's disease, it's very challenging. But you're right, the body's an interconnected set of systems because I got type 2 diabetes due to the Addisons. So I had to fix the Addisons before I could fix the diabetes. And so everything had this snowball effect. And truthfully, couldn't fix the Addison's disease until I fixed the autoimmune issues. And I couldn't fix the autoimmune issues until I fixed my gut. And
Right.
so everything is connected. And that's really what I was trying to understand. And truthfully, over the 8 years of seeing natural health practitioners, so I mean, I saw every different type of natural health practitioner. I was doing colonics, I was doing this, I was doing that. And they all had pieces of the puzzle. And I would actually get better for like a few months at a time, and then I would relapse. And that's because I was on 30 different supplements. I was doing 10 different treatments at a time. I didn't know which ones worked and what didn't, and I couldn't maintain that. And that's the thing that I try to share with people is that good to get well, but you have to know how you're getting well and what you did in order to get well so that you don't relapse again.
That is so true. And that's something I do see a lot of folks doing is we call it, throwing spaghetti at the wall.
Mhm.
Right? And then you end up really not knowing, yes, what worked and what's actually going on. I'm also noticing we've been having this season a number of practitioners from different modalities on the podcast, and every one of them has started medicine because of their own health journey, myself included, which started with being so sick in India. And that's how I got into Ayurveda because that's where I was sick and that's where I was healing, learning to heal. Yeah. So you've made some trips to India. Can you tell us a little bit about your connection to Ayurveda, how this fits in for you?
So essentially, I got well at 27 years old, so 17 to 27. Before that, I was a certified nutritionist, certified personal trainer, certified strength and conditioning specialist, but had been reading all about health, of course, for myself. I had to learn how to heal, and I was using that with all of my clients. But once I did get well, it gave me, I don't think that people should wait to start to help others, but it gave me the confidence to say, okay, yeah, this is what I should do. And of course, my mentor said, you have the knowledge, go back to school, get your degree or get your certification, whatever it might be. So I decided, great, my career is in a place where it's good. So I am going to do my doctoral degree. Now, what I wanted to do was be able to do clinical internships. That was a big part of it. So I had to do over 2,300 hours of clinical internships. The nice thing is I got to apply for them and choose if I got in, which ones I wanted to do. And so about half of them were in Ayurvedic medicine. And so, as I shared before, I was in India 3 times and I was in Sri Lanka. And all of those different clinics I was in, I was learning about Ayurvedic medicine. Now, most of them were in poor urban communities, if you want to say it like that. And so we were helping the general public and we were seeing just a wide array of health issues. And that was very powerful. So I'm very happy about that. The other one I did was at a beautiful kind of resort clinic. And that was different. Not everybody was super sick going there. Some people were just coming from Europe to go for their annual, or maybe every 3 years they went and they did Panchakarma. And so I got to learn Panchakarma there. And I like the highest end because they had all the best things. And I learned how to make the herbal decoctions and all that. So they were all great internships. Each one of them taught me a little something different. But I loved the kind of like the emergency room mentality of a lot of the urban clinics that I was at, where you just would see 30 people a day.
Right, right. And you really get to see like all manner of different things walk in the door.
100%. Exactly.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that makes sense why when I read your book, I listen to your podcast, I hear you recommending so many things for your cases where I'm like, oh, that's so Ayurveda. You know, you
Mhm.
talk about sort of like a 10 p.m. bedtime, which is something we talk about on this podcast all the time. You talk about individualized medicine, sort of how each person has a body type. You talk about what you absorb being more important than what you eat, which to me feels like kind of a duh, of course, at this point. But in the health conversation, I think a lot of people are focused on eating this thing and taking this supplement. And then there's like the protein conversation right now, women in perimenopause, menopause, everyone's sort of freaking out about protein,
Yeah,
and they're asking what's the Ayurvedic take on it. I'm like, well, are you digesting all that
that's right.
protein? Right.
Ayurveda would never recommend a gram per pound of body weight. Like that is just not an Ayurvedic thing. But also, I understand that if your goal is just complete body transformation for a season of your life, that might be the season you're in while you're trying to do that. But that's certainly not a great long-term perspective. And so I try to share with people there's short-term ideologies, but let's not lose sight of the long term. Because yes, protein is an important macronutrient in your body, but not more important than your fats or your carbohydrates, right?
Right.
Carbohydrates always go through different seasons as well, where they're demonized and then they're kind of brought back. And I'm like, well, they're always the same. It's just like we view them differently, right?
Right. Right. It's not the carbohydrates' fault.
Yes, exactly. They didn't do anything wrong. Yeah.
Yeah. Although it could be the processing of the
100%.
carbohydrate.
Oh, I completely agree with you. And the endomorphic kapha body type isn't going to do as well with starchy carbohydrates. They still need them, but that's more of a calming cortisol levels, vata-based body type. And so, and then of course, the more output, the more input you can get. And so it is always balancing. And that's why I understand the game and people are just out there marketing their diet plan. But whenever you say this one thing is for everyone, well, you're going to be wrong at least 2/3 of the time, right? And so when it's good for probably like a third of people, that's about it.
That's a good way to look at it. Yeah. So as you're coming out this body of work, Personomics, where you're really bringing to the forefront this idea of personalized medicine. I think how you arrived at this information is through your practice, through your clinical work. But how are you out there in the world trying to explain the importance of personalization in a real type format, like a short version?
For sure. So when I finished my degree, I was doing my internships. I worked at another practice for about 6 months to a year as I was just studying for my boards. Did that, and then I opened a second practice in Boston, which was essentially a functional medicine integrative clinic. And we were at our peak, we were doing 20,000 one-on-one appointments a year there. So massive amount of clinical data. And we just got to see people from all walks of life. People would fly in from Chicago, from wherever to Boston, and it was amazing. And then what happened was my podcast came out in 2016. We started to get more virtual based appointments. Then my book came out, my first book, 2018, The Rain Barrel Effect, and then we got more virtual appointments. And so what we had to figure out was how do we ship labs and protocols all over the world? And so that is what we did by 2019. And from there, that's our current practice today, which we just call EquiLife, which is it's an Ayurvedic thing as well. It's creating dynamic equilibrium in the body. So it's all about balance, meaning that the traditional naturopaths, the first ones in the 1800s, all they talked about was essentially bioregulatory medicine and whatever was off. So basically, if you had a deficiency, you brought it up. If you had a toxicity, too much of something, you lowered it, right? And so they water fasted people if needed. They brought them out in sunshine. They did mineral baths. They did all sorts of different things, but only based on what it was that your body needed. So over that time, we've now done over 300,000 one-on-one appointments, more than 300,000 lab tests. And what I developed from that then was Personomics, meaning that everyone needs a good foundational program because we're all humans. But then after that, if you want to speed up the healing process like I did, you need to figure out what your exact deficiencies are and your exact toxicities. One person's might be, oh, they have parasites, they have SIBO. Another person might be, they have heavy metals and mercury and aluminum. Okay, well, I had those my senior year of high school, and I didn't know that until I ran the lab test because I was eating a can of tuna every single night with microwavable rice and cheap olive oil. Now, I was in college, I had no money, I was trying to do natural bodybuilding because I wanted to fix the outside of my body because I couldn't fix the inside. So I was like, oh, well, I'll feel better if I look better. Like that was my mentality. And you know what? It actually helped me get through a lot of those hard years. And because I needed to focus on something other than the internal health, which wasn't improving. But eating a can of tuna every single day is a lot of mercury. And so, unfortunately, I had very high levels of mercury and I had to need to lower those in order to heal as well. So, Personomics, if you think about it, it's your biological blueprint. It's what your body needs. So my body versus your body, Kate, they need a lot of the same things, foundational, but that last 20 to 30%, that's what makes all the difference. And that's what Personomics is all about, the study of you.
Mm. And so the information's coming through the lab work.
In an ideal world, you're going to run not just blood work. Blood work is big now, right? Because now you can get it anytime you want and anywhere, not just through your PCP, which I think is great. We should democratize people's own health. You shouldn't have to ask your doctor if you can run your vitamin D3. Like that's outlandish because that's not part of standard blood work anymore. So the difference is blood work will show you a disease state, but it does not show you the underlying root cause. So what we run are the integrative health functional medicine labs that look at gut health, that look at cortisol throughout the day, that look at heavy metals, all the things that you really need to know that would cause your blood work to then be off. And so those are ideal. But if you can't, inside of Personomics, there are quizzes, self-assessments. Because if you can't run the lab, I get it. Okay, then here's what to do next if you have got like 5 or 6 plus yeses out of the dozen.
Right, right. Kind of like how we do the dosha quiz in
Yes.
Ayurveda.
And
Yeah.
it's funny, I always tell people, and I don't know if you feel the same way, you should always have your, friend or family member or partner do your dosha assessment, not you, because we always choose the things that we want to be.
Right, right. I say the same. And also, I recommend that people look at their life, whatever they can remember, so that
Mhm.
it's not just now. Because
100%.
then, right, we're just answering to the imbalance that we're experiencing now.
Prakriti versus Prakriti, for sure. Yes, 100%.
Yeah, right. Which I heard you recently talking about kind of maybe the pitfalls of hormone testing and looking at hormones individually. You were talking about how, it's not just the hormone. It's looking
100%.
at, so you were saying if one person's blood work comes in with a certain number, well, what was that number for them, 20 years ago?
Exactly. A lot of men might be at maybe it's a 680 for their testosterone. And so, well, doctor's like, well, we need to get you up to 1,000 for total testosterone. Okay, one was like, well, what's their free testosterone? Like they might just convert really well to free testosterone, which is really all that matters. And they may have never been at 1,000 even when they were 18 years old. So now we're trying to get them to super physiological levels, which is not great for someone's body to go beyond what is normal for you. And then for women, it's so important that you don't look at estrogen and progesterone in isolation. And if you're going to measure them, well, more women tend towards estrogen dominance, which is the feeling, especially during the luteal phase, they feel more bloated, retaining water, maybe some acne, maybe some oily skin, lower mood, trouble sleeping, etc. So when we look at that, we really need to measure levels during days 19, 20, or 21 of a 28-day cycle to see what's the estrogen to progesterone ratio, which is more important to look at that because they might produce in normal levels per se blood work, but their estrogen is still more dominant than progesterone. And they're going to feel so much better helping to get that excess estrogen out of the body and then raising progesterone levels naturally, which oftentimes comes from lowering cortisol, which is why you should always measure your hormones with cortisol and DHEA, not just in their own. So everything tells a story, and we talked about the very beginning of the conversation, everything is interconnected. Looking at one single metric is one of the worst things that you can do for your health.
Absolutely. So to kind of break down this, everything you just said about the hormones, the cortisol, progesterone, estrogen, you've mentioned a case study in your Personomics book named Hillary,
That's right.
who I think is a perimenopause avatar. I think a lot of the listeners of this podcast can relate to this person. So would you talk us through that case as a way to kind of help women understand like this grouping of symptoms and how you're viewing it?
Yeah, so Hillary is like a lot of my clients that I work with even currently. So trying to do it all, raise a family, busy entrepreneur, and simply feeling the effects of that now that there's some hormonal decline. So the brain fog, the exhaustion, feeling worse post-exercise, caffeine not even really helping anymore, the crashes mid-afternoon, bloating, brain fog, etc. So low mood, low energy, low libido, low endurance. That's a lot of the women that I'm working with. And so what we have to look at is we say, oh, well, let's just use hormone replacement therapy. That's not my go-to. And the reason is that it is masking then most likely what is going on that was going on with Hillary. So when women are starting to enter perimenopause, which is really a 10-year period from anywhere from 40 to 50 or 45 to 55, it just depends on kind of when your cycle is eventually going to end. Part of that's genetic, but you can measure that too with your luteinizing hormone, follicle stimulating hormone, and then your AMH, anti-Mullerian hormone. And those will tell you how close you are to actually getting to menopause. But anyway, when we looked at Hillary's case, we said, okay, when we look at her cortisol levels, besides her estrogen and progesterone, her cortisol was very low in the morning. And so when you don't produce enough cortisol, there's not enough get up and go. And you're going to have brain fog based issues after years of chronic stress. While her thyroid wasn't above a 5.0 for TSH, which means no need to give her levothyroxine or medication, but it was not optimal, right? And so since it wasn't optimal, we had to optimize that thyroid. And then the worst part was her cortisol was elevated at night. And so elevated cortisol in the evening leads to then less deep sleep, which we should get at least 75 to 90 minutes, and less REM sleep, at least 2 hours a night, to rejuvenate both the body and the mind. So now every day is accumulated sleep debt and stress because she wakes up the next morning not being fully recovered, but has to push through her day. And so what we did was we said, okay, you're working out 5 days a week, 4 or 5 days a week now, doing HIIT-based workouts for body transformation. I totally get it. We need a 12 to 16 week season where we're going to take that down. We're going to focus more on walking, telling the sympathetic nervous system, the nervous system, that it needs to be in more of a safe state, calm state. So we can lower cortisol in the evening. That will then allow it to rise in the morning, and we can replenish the hormones as well with herbals right now. So there's great Ayurvedic herbs that boost phytoestrogen in the body and or progesterone. But remember, just lowering cortisol at the appropriate times, like in the evening, will increase progesterone on its own. And so that was a big game changer for Hillary and many of the women that we work with in our practice.
Yeah. I often talk about how lowering cortisol balances progesterone by sort of saying there's only so much food on the plate for your body to produce these hormones. And so it's like the cortisol steals from the progesterone. Would you agree with that analogy?
Yeah, absolutely. People have tried to disprove that over and over. I probably have 30,000 lab tests that would say otherwise. So you fix cortisol, especially in the evening, and you'll watch progesterone rebound. And we do that in women that are not able to get pregnant all the time. So one of the main reasons for infertility nowadays, sure, you could say heavy metals, you could say a lot of other things. I'm not going to disagree with you. Those cause inflammation in the body and they cause more stress, but it is usually more chronic based stress and elevated cortisol that does not allow progesterone to get to the levels needed in order to conceive.
Right. And then we end up seeing the signs of estrogen dominance,
Absolutely correct.
which
Yes,
really doesn't have anything to do with a person creating too much estrogen.
that's right. Almost eight
Right.
out of 10 cases, maybe even nine, estrogen levels are normal. It's progesterone that's too low.
Right. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for fleshing that out for us. That makes so much sense. I really appreciate that. And I'm gearing up in this conversation to be the perimenopause case study as this conversation started with, your team reaching out saying, we're doing this cool thing, would you like to run the minerals and metals test and then do a podcast where we talk about your results? I was like, ooh, I know that everybody's going to want to hear about Kate's results for sure. But also, Dr. Cabral, I had the first thing ever show up on my regular PCP panel last fall, which was low alkaline phosphate.
Hmm.
And I had never had anything in the red, ever. And so it has turned my attention towards the blood work conversation
Yes.
more in a way that I didn't really think about it, previously, and realizing that there probably are some deficiencies going on. And it was so interesting because my primary care, I said, "Oh my gosh, what's this red thing about, the alkaline phosphate?" And she said, "It's just like you just need more calories." I was like, "Does that? No, I don't. That doesn't track for me." And
Yeah.
then I talked to a friend, a functional medicine practitioner who has been on this podcast in the past, and she was like, "For me, it's always low zinc. Every time I see that number, it's always low zinc." And so I started eating oysters and sunflower seeds, and like getting on the zinc train a little bit. And I
It
think
is
it's,
like 70% of the time, it is low zinc. Yes.
yeah, yeah. Which also, I mean, because of all the COVID years, I do supplement zinc a lot, like when
Mhm.
I travel and in the winter. And so we'll hear your take on all
Yeah.
this, I'm
Wait till you
sure.
see your
But
lab test. It
yeah,
actually shows that. Yes.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's cool. So tell me why minerals and metals? Like, why is that a good starting place?
Yeah, this is one of the most approachable labs. So we have something called the Big Five labs that in an ideal world, everyone would run those. In an ideal world, insurance would cover all of them. Like that's the goal. And the
Right.
Big Five looks at everything from your mineral levels, your vitamin levels, your gut health, heavy metals. It looks at omega-3 to omega-6 inflammation score. It looks at kidney to overgrowth, and it looks at food sensitivity. So it looks at all the hormones as well that we were talking about. So it's a complete picture. The minerals and metals test is one of those that looks at your stress levels through the electrolyte status. It looks at your mineral levels and it looks at your heavy metals. And it's just a couple of snips of hair, which is protein. Now, a lot of people say, well, I don't know if I believe in the whole hair thing. It's been around 50 years. NASA uses it. They use it for heavy metal testing in pregnancy and with autism. They use it for all sorts of different drug testing. It's a very viable way to test. And again, it's just looking at a tissue. It's looking at protein, and it's what your body has excreted. That's what we're looking at. You want about a half an inch to an inch and a half maximum from anywhere in the back of the head. Very simple to do the test. And it gives you every half inch is about 30 days of data. And so if we do an inch and a half, it's 90 days of data. And so that's really what we're looking at. Great first place to start. And it was one of the first places I started, along with the stress mood and metabolism test that gives you your cortisol levels, your hormones, your thyroid, vitamin D, etc.
If your skin has been feeling dry, dull, or like it constantly needs more product but never feels quite nourished, there is an Ayurvedic approach worth trying. Something I've been loving lately is Beauty Balm from Banyan Botanicals. Glow starts with how you nourish your skin, and this balm is all about deep, lasting moisture and care. It's made with nourishing ghee, shatavari, and a subtle rose geranium scent, creating this rich, soothing blend that helps soften skin, support hydration, and promote that healthy, natural glow. What I love most is how versatile it is. One balm, every dry spot, face, hands, lips, cuticles, elbows, knees. Beauty Balm does it all. A little goes a long way, and it leaves your skin feeling soft, supple, and genuinely cared for. Like everything from Banyan Botanicals, it's made with high quality ingredients and rooted in the wisdom of Ayurveda. So if you're looking for one simple product to support glowing, hydrated skin wherever you need it, try Banyan Botanicals Beauty Balm. You can find it at banyanbotanicals.com/Kate, and I'll link it in the show notes. We spend so much time thinking about wellness, what we eat, how we sleep, how we manage stress, but oral health is an important part of this bigger picture. That's why I'm excited to share today's sponsor, Dr. Tongues. Dr. Tongues has been creating innovative natural oral care products for over 25 years, combining modern dental science with holistic wellness principles to support a healthier mouth and overall well being. Their products are thoughtfully designed to work with your body, not against it. I love their incredibly popular Smart Floss, which is clinically shown to remove up to 55% more plaque than traditional flosses. I also love that Dr. Tongues focuses on sustainability, eco-conscious packaging, and avoiding unnecessary chemicals like PFAs, PTFE, dyes, and harsh additives whenever possible. If you're looking to upgrade your family's oral care routine with products that feel healthier and truly effective, visit drtongues.com. New customers get 15% off their purchase. All right. Well, so should we get to it? For
Yeah,
those of you who have access to the video, we're going to do a screen share of the test results so you can see. And those of you who are just listening, will make sure you can follow along.
all right. Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Perfect. So I just brought up your minerals and metals test. And so, like a lot of advanced, even blood work, it'll show red on both ends, which means out of range, yellowish orange, which shows low normal or high normal. And then the green zone is the optimal zone. But just like your body, everything is connected. So the amazing thing about when you look at bioregulatory medicine, TCM, et cetera, everything pulls on everything. It balances. And so when we look at this lab test, we're going to go through not just the minerals or metals themselves, but actually the ratios. So the most important part of this lab test to really understand is the electrolyte minerals. This does not mean that a human is taking in too much calcium or too much magnesium or too much sodium or too much potassium or even too little. What it really looks at is the HPA axis response, the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal response. And what that means is how much stress are you producing in fight or flight? And so if all of them are high, that's the alarm stage of stress. Very high levels of stress, body's going to burn out. Like that's just, you can only elevate for that long. For low, where I was, which is the body's completely exhausted and wiped out, just wiped out, need to rebuild. Your pattern is a little bit different. So we often see elevated calcium and magnesium, but low sodium potassium. That shows really high stress, but poor body response. So think of sodium and potassium as the adrenal response. And to put this in more kind of modern terms, the adrenals help to produce they produce cortisol, but they also produce something called norepinephrine, an excitatory neurotransmitter, and they produce another thing called aldosterone. Aldosterone controls sodium and potassium in the body. It really helps to increase blood pressure for fight or flight, and much more. So when we look at yours, you have sodium and potassium elevated. I don't see this as often. I still see it, probably maybe 1 out of 10 times. And calcium and magnesium are in fairly normal zones with calcium a little bit lower. Here's the interesting thing. It shows that Kate's body is this is more of a high achiever, pitta-based mindset state. So this is someone who's getting after it on a daily basis. When they are working, they're probably fully immersed and they are, in it to win it. Again, we've never
Yep.
met before, but that's what this shows. But it also shows that even though there is this stress state, probably during the day, it is not exaggerated and the body is handling it totally fine. Because if it wasn't, calcium and magnesium would be elevated as well because you would be breaking down tissue and bone from your body in order to elevate that calcium magnesium level. Does that make sense?
That makes total sense. Yeah, yes, completely. This is so fun because I'm like, yes, that makes sense. And it's a question that I've had, especially kind of getting deeper into perimenopause. I can tell that I am not managing stress as well, and I work harder at it. Like toning it down when I start to feel like I'm going through the roof, you know?
100%. And it seems that with these levels, it'd be hard to achieve this if you weren't though sleeping well. Do you sleep well at night?
It feels like my job. In
Okay.
the past couple years, it feels like my job, but it's like it is a number one priority. So I wouldn't say that it's always great, but I prioritize it, and I'm not like getting up earlier than I should be or staying up late and that sort of thing. I have a pretty good rhythm.
Yeah, that's important just to be able to maintain this. The next way would be what I call the three anchors during the day, easing into the morning.
Yeah.
At lunch, switching off for 30 minutes, going for a walk or breath work or lying down for a 30-minute nap, whatever it might be, but like non-sleep deep rest. And then end of the day, how do you end the day? How do you cool down? What's the wind down routine? Would be very helpful. It doesn't show that your body needs a lot more magnesium. I'm assuming you're taking probably some right now. What it most likely needs more of is we use a product called Adrenal Soothe. It contains ashwagandha at 600 milligrams, phosphoserine, and it contains L-theanine. That will help bring that stress response down. You might try one at lunch, two at dinner, and those herbs can be really calming. And then if you find yourself not able to get to sleep or stay asleep, a little bit of melatonin knocks the cortisol down, not mega dosage, because we're not a mega dosage individual. And even doing that for 2 to 3 weeks can help reset that, just basically telling the body by 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, hey, it's time to switch off. Because sometimes it's hard with the pitta-based mindset to turn off the dopamine and the norepinephrine and to say, no, okay, let's save that for tomorrow. So typically write things down in a journal, get them off of your mind, follow the 3-2-1 formula, at least 3 hours before bed, no food, 2 hours before bed, really no liquids, 1 hour before bed, no blue light. And all of these things can be really helpful.
Yes, and those are all things that I do, which probably explains what we're seeing on the labs.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And
Yeah.
it looks good overall. Like I said, I still want to bring down the doubles that we're looking at for all of these because it is a good amount of stress in the body,
hmm
especially if you're doing intense workouts on top of that. I don't know if you are, but then this is, it's really pushing the body to a higher limit.
Yeah, yeah. Which it does give me pause because I don't really push. I did for a long time, but the past couple of years I've been purposely taking it easier. I mean, I work out and I do a lot of moving, but it's not high impact. Yeah.
You can explain some of this with the high intensity exercise, but it's usually mental state, meaning like, because you have to be in this state for a good amount of time, not just a 30-minute workout. And so that is more what we're looking at. So it's trying to just calm the body. Binaural beats are also very helpful. Breath work is, of course, really the best. So yeah, all those are
Yeah.
great things. Of course, yoga, etc. Now, when we move into the minerals, so the minerals are actually your mineral levels. So that's what we look at. And it's iron, copper, manganese, zinc, chromium, selenium, and phosphorus. So we can talk about those. Iron, we actually always want to be low. The reason we run it is because if it is elevated, we always have people run their blood work. We have them run their ferritin, total iron binding capacity, and iron saturation rate, because it can be a giveaway that there is what is called hemochromatosis, too much iron in the body. And we find this a number of times, probably like 3 or 4 times out of 100. And it's a serious condition. It creates a lot of oxidative stress. It's quite dangerous. And so the best way to lower it is to give blood. And just having your blood taken is giving blood. That's a way. It's usually not going to be the case for women who have their cycle, but it is important for all men and postmenopausal women. So it's an important one to run.
We saw that on my husband's blood work.
Oh, you
Yeah.
did? Yeah. So that's
Yes.
like one of
Yeah.
those 3 out of 100. And it's
Yeah.
it's great to be able to say. Now, it's not always directly correlated with blood, but more times than not, it is. And so it's a important one to look at. So the first one I want to jump to is your copper to zinc ratio. So basically, I didn't mention in the beginning, but calcium, magnesium are partners, sodium, potassium are partners, and they have their own ratio to be in. Zinc and copper are also partners, and they should be anywhere from a 10 to 15 to 1 ratio. So your zinc is a 54. Ideal range is up to 24, 25. So it's basically double. Your copper, we really wanted a 1.5 and you're a 1.3. So you're almost there for copper, but a little lower. Why would copper be lower than zinc? Well, someone who's taking more zinc without copper is going to push down the other. So if we want to lower calcium, we take in more magnesium, right? If we ever want to lower more sodium, we take in more potassium. If we ever want to lower zinc, we would take in more copper. Does that make sense?
Yes. Hmm.
So it's like a scale, it's like a teeter-totter, and you push down harder on one side to push down the other because they compete for absorption as well. The minerals
Right.
are a little bit different because they're based on the autonomic nervous system. So if the sympathetic nervous system needs to push harder for fight or flight, it will increase sodium and calcium. If we want to calm that, we give more magnesium and potassium as well. Magnesium is a brake on the sympathetic nervous system. Potassium is gas for the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest and relax.
Hmm.
All right. So, how much zinc are you taking on a daily basis, would you say?
I go in and out of it, honestly. I have a product, new chapter that's a zinc, but it does also have copper in it. And it's more like if I'm exposed. Like I recently was at a teaching gig where everyone got COVID. And so around that time,
Mhm.
I'll hit the zinc for maybe 5 days or something like that. And then in the
Well,
winter,
that's not that long.
yeah, no, it's not a ton, to be honest. I'm not doing it regularly unless I'm exposed to something, which maybe this was around the time. I think this was before that COVID thing. So I'm not taking a ton of it. I would say a couple times a
I
month,
wonder if it's
maybe.
in another product. We usually don't see levels of around a 54 unless
Yeah.
you're supplementing with really well over 50 milligrams a day. That would include lozenges or immune boosters and other supplements as well,
Right, because I
multivitamins.
use the zinc lozenge when I teach and
Hmm.
then when I'm exposed, like when I'm on flights and things. But again, it's not none of this is something that's happening every day.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
so
just not taking zinc will allow that to fall.
yeah.
But we still, I mean, I would absolutely recommend a good daily activated multivitamin, or we use the daily nutritional support, which is a 15-to-1 ratio of zinc to copper, because that's 100% of what you need for the day. It's not more than that, but at least you get also that 1 milligram of copper. Why copper is important? Now, you don't want too much copper. You don't want more copper than zinc in terms of ratio, because that could affect allergies and ADHD and a lot of other factors. So it's not like that we're trying to go overboard on those, but copper is needed for your thyroid. It's needed for your mitochondria, so really important for energy and ATP production. It's needed for your hair, skin, nails. It helps with gray hair. So there's a lot that copper is very good for. So I wouldn't supplement with extra zinc right now. Now, 5 days is no big deal, honestly. If you ever
Yeah.
feel like you're getting sick, yeah, zinc is one of the best things you could take.
Right.
Yeah, so that's that.
Mm.
Manganese looks good. Chromium's a little low, but we always see it low unless someone's supplementing because that and selenium are not really longer in the soil like they used to be. So unless you're eating a lot of nuts and seeds, like Brazil nut, etc., you're not going to get a lot of selenium, and the nuts and seeds would help with the chromium. But okay, like as long as your hemoglobin A1C is really below a 5.4, that's what we look for, then you're good there. And phosphorus is excellent. And phosphorus, if it was too high, that would show more bone and muscle tissue breakdown. That would make me a little bit more concerned about the higher elevated sodium potassium, but it's not. It's actually right in the middle. It's great. And that also usually means adequate protein intake.
Oh, that's great. I've been working on that for sure.
So that looks good. Any questions there before we move on to your heavy metals?
No, no, that's super interesting. I didn't realize that this could kind of give you a sense of how you're responding to stress. I find that information really helpful.
Even if you don't run that stress mood and metabolism test, which is all the sex hormones, all the cortisol, all the thyroid, blood sugar, vitamin D, this gives you a really good, it's like a barometer for what would be off. Like it's a really good sense before you even look at your cortisol. So for you, I don't think you'd be really low cortisol probably any time during the day, maybe in the morning. But we haven't talked more about kind of how your day looks and all of that, how you feel in the morning. But I bet your evening cortisol is elevated. If I just had to
Mm.
make a guess on 30,000 plus, labs that we've done, I would have guessed that. But again, I don't like to guess. That's what we test, right? So that's what we look at. But at the same time, if you believe that, then okay, maybe you don't want a lab test and you start using things like the adrenal soothe and keep taking your magnesium at dinner. And then only if needed, you would use a little bit of that liquid melatonin before bed, which is not
Hmm.
groggy in the morning.
Right.
So here's something interesting for us to talk about because we see aluminum elevated quite often in our practice because aluminum is literally everywhere. So aluminum foil, antiperspirants, aluminum pans, aluminum spatulas, it's in the air, it's in tap water. So it's literally everywhere, right? But your mercury is borderline. It's still not high, just to let you know. But you have elevated lead, and that is something that we don't ever want to see, right?
Mm.
So none of this, by the way, should be scary to anybody because everything is fixable. We're doing a heavy metal detox, but we actually need to figure out why is there lead?
Hmm.
Because there should be no exposure to lead. Now, it's not going to be zero because there's lead in the soil, of course. There's lead in nature. So when you eat spinach or you eat leafy greens, dark leafy greens, there's lead in them, right? So, well, let me stop there and ask you if you have any idea where you might be exposed to lead.
I do not. Nothing obvious.
Do you take any greens powders?
No.
Okay. Do you take any chocolate, cacao,
A little
dark
bit. Not like,
not a lot.
no, no, not like daily.
So those are two healthy things that we often see them in. And then the third is herbs that are contaminated. So a lot of herbs coming from overseas are contaminated. So again, I don't want to scare people with that. All you have to do is just say, hey, does the company have third-party testing? And you just want to make sure that there's no lead in that. So lead really does come from nature. And unfortunately, it's in a lot of things. And unless there is a purity label along with it, they could just be building up over the years. Because I know that you're obviously not eating lead paint or anything like that. So I was like, where is this lead coming from? And we do, we do want to figure that out. That's one for us to kind of look at.
Yeah.
Check your water levels because it's often in water. So if you're not using a reverse osmosis, now's a good time to switch to a reverse osmosis with just minerals added back. And that's what I would look at. And of course, I would do a heavy metal detox. That's 8 weeks, and it's going to help to eliminate this from the body. I also recommend infrared sauna or sauna in general. We won't overdo it for you due to the elevated sodium potassium. And I would recommend taking an electrolyte drink in there with you, even if it's just the Ayurvedic version, which is sea salt or rock salt and lemon lime. You could do that. But I would, keep those minerals in your body.
Hmm. Is it possible, like I used to paint houses in college, is it possible being around like paint? Because we did paint this very old building. Would that still be showing up in this way?
Only would show up if there was a lot of weight loss, recent weight loss. And it's a good point to bring up because when people drop 20, 30 pounds, they're releasing everything that the adipose tissue, those fat cells store, hormones, everything can come out of those. And that's why sometimes there's Herxheimer reactions when people lose weight. So that's what we always recommend a good functional medicine detox, which is not, it's the modern version of Panchakarma. Like
Yeah.
when I talk about it in my first book, The Rain Barrel Effect, I'm literally saying, okay, we're going to do a functional medicine detox. We're going to do sauna, so basically sweat. We're also going to do coffee enema if you want to do a coffee enema, which is their version of Basti, right? And so it's like all of these things are just more palatable to the Western-based culture for being able to, complete a good Panchakarma.
Hmm.
And I would recommend the same for you. Like we just need to kind of wring out the body, get these heavy metals out. And if it was past exposure, then okay, we're getting that out. Just probably not from 20 years ago. I think you've already would have eliminated that with all the clean things that you've done.
Right,
So I
right.
think that this is a more recent exposure.
Okay. Wow, it's so interesting.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
this we can't retest because basically we retest, we follow the protocol for 12 to 16 weeks. Then you let your hair grow out for at least 12 weeks, then you can retest. Now, if you ever say like, oh, I really want to make sure that there's no lead in my body, there is another lab you can do that's a blood spot in urine from home. It's called the complete heavy metal toxicity test. And that will show you immediately, are you still being exposed to it? So anybody who wants to, you can always do that as well.
Wow. Yeah, interesting. Well, I've never done a heavy metal cleanse ever. I've done so many things, but I've actually never done that. So,
It's a
yeah,
great one to do. I mean, most people are
yeah.
going to find a little bit of metals in their body accumulating, and then you start to just say, okay, we're going to do one-for-one swaps with, water, with all the. So basically, there's so much you can do, right? So I try to make it as simple as possible. And the best thing to do is you say, well, what's the thing I'm exposed to the most? That's air. Okay, well, we want to get an air filter in the house. You can put it in the bedroom 2 hours before bed, and then move it into your living space during the day. Okay, great. So we've taken care of the air. Next, what's the next thing? Water. Okay, so we need a good water filter. I used to use the Berkey water filter, and it's not that I don't think it's great, and I have one in an emergency in case the power goes out, but it doesn't really take out fluoride, and I want that to be taken out as well. And so I do use a reverse osmosis now, and I just add the minerals back. So yeah, that's what I'm doing, and that then guarantees you all these things are taken out of the water.
Okay.
And then after that, it's clean food, right? And so then it's trying to buy organic as much as you can or follow the clean 15 and dirty dozen. If you can't buy all organic, okay, well, then the clean 15 are the ones to purchase conventional based.
Great. Well, I'll get on the heavy metals, apparently.
We can get that link for you.
Yeah.
It's very straightforward. It's three different nutritional supplements. One to help with the biofilms, which hold a lot of heavy metals in the gut. So the gut's about 26 feet. So we want to remove the intestine part. And then the second part is a natural chelator of heavy metals that contains Craxel chlorella, spirulina, et cetera, et cetera. And then the third one is a binder, and it's a low histamine binder, low sulfate. So for people with sensitivities, that's not going to affect them like a lot of the other pure charcoals would.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Makes sense.
All right, and the last part on this is just your additional minerals. All of those are they're called ultra trace minerals. They're meant to be low in the first place: nickel, cobalt, molybdenum, and lithium. And so all of yours look good.
Great. Wow, that was so interesting. I love that. So if folks who are listening want to get on board, do something like this, how could they get this going on?
For your community, we always love to be able to, especially if it's your first time running a functional medicine lab, is just to give people a great offer if they'd like. And that's just at stephencabral.com/Kate. And that's half off that minerals and metals test. That also comes with a coaching lab results call. So they will walk you through, just like I did, what the results mean and what would be the right plan for you. And you can ask a few questions there. So it's an introduction to functional medicine and integrative health. And it's the first test I ran, which is why I like to pay it forward.
Yeah, thank you. Well, we appreciate the discount and it's just super interesting and just like more data, as you said, we don't need to scare anybody, right?
Right.
But just more data going into the pool, of how we look at the big picture.
Well, and these are underlying root causes. That's why it's not meant to scare, but like these things build up over time, and we can't ignore the reasons why you might have more inflammation in your body due to these heavy metals. Like that's a real thing, right?
Yeah.
And so we say, okay, they can create all the things that we're genetically susceptible to. So like my genes are not great genes. I've got MTHFR issues, et cetera. So I'm just far more prone to inflammation. So what I needed to do was fix my gut, probably, well, fix my stress in my gut first and foremost, lower those heavy metals, and do a lot of things that I needed to fix my histamine issues, to fix all the other issues I had. And heavy metals is one piece of that puzzle.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I appreciate this. It's been so fun. We have a tradition with guests of asking three rapid fire questions. Are you up for it?
All right, let's go.
All right. So the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning.
So one thing that I've learned over the years is that if I don't get right out of bed and get going, my body doesn't wake up with that circadian rhythm because I'm often waking up before the sun,
Hmm.
at least in like the north, where for like 7, 8 months of the year, it's not really that bright when I wake up around between 5:30 and 6. And so I right away go into the bathroom, brush my teeth, shave, get right in the shower. And then I am good to go. Like I'm ready to go for the day. I don't need a lot of caffeine. I don't need any of those things. So for me, it's working with that circadian rhythm where it's supposed to be cortisol high between 6 and 8 in the morning, and then not kind of bump that up later. What I find is like on a Sunday, I just maybe keep it a relaxing day. I don't necessarily start the day that way. Then it will be more of like a not sluggish, but more of a just okay, not as high energy. So that's what I do. I get right into my day, and I found that to be really effective for people with brain fog or low energy. Is just to tell your body, nope, it's time to start. It's time to wake up.
That's brilliant. That makes so much sense. How about
And
your
it's not easy to
first?
do. It's easy to hit the snooze button. It's easy to
Yes.
sit down for a little bit first, to meditate, to journal. And I've tried all those things. And so it's also understanding what works best for your body. For me, I need to get into it. And then that increases my cortisol naturally, and it eliminates any of that brain fog or fatigue.
Yeah, I can see how that would work. Yeah. How about your first food or drink of the day?
So I believe in intermittent fasting without a doubt, 12 hours for most people. There's always a contraindication, meaning like if you have hypoglycemia, you've got more catabolic, so more of a Vata-based disorder. Yeah, you don't want to fast for longer. It makes total sense. For me, stop eating by 6. I've got 2 young daughters. Sometimes if they've got dance or whatever it might be, maybe it's not till 6:30, but always try to finish by 6. And then I don't start eating until 8 a.m. That's my breakfast. But at 7:30, that's when I break everything. And that's when I do, for me, my green juice and a little bit of electrolytes, and then my away from food vitamins, like my proteolytic enzymes and anything I need that kind of helps systemically for the body. So that's the first thing I do is I break it with hydration.
That makes sense. Yeah. And then you'll eat, half an hour later or so.
That's right. Because
Yeah.
just liquid will be out of your stomach in 30 minutes.
Yep. Yep. Again, makes so much sense. How about your wind down routine at night? I feel like you've already shared a good bit about that, but what's yours?
I had elaborate wind down routines, truthfully, to overcome my insomnia because my insomnia was brutal.
Mm,
So I have a very aggressive pitta mindset that I'm always trying to balance, and I did a much better job once I really started to get into my mid 30s. I'm in my late 40s now, and now it's automatic. And that only comes though with years of training your circadian rhythm and nervous system. So circadian rhythm is just we're diphasic beings. We are not nocturnal. So we should be up with the light and then asleep essentially or downtime during the dark. That's our goal. 12 hours up, 12 hours down. And so what I needed to do and the biggest game changer for me to overcome insomnia, yes, I did need to use nutritional supplements, but far better than me using sleeping pills and Benadryl every night. And then I was able to wean those for the most part. I still use some before bed because it does help with my cortisol levels, which no more Addison's disease, so I can't complain about that. But 1 hour before bed is that wind down time. So basically at 8:30, I've already had family time, had time with my daughters. They should be getting ready for bed as well because we're trying to instill that in them. Some of their classmates aren't going to bed till 11 or 12 at night, waking up at 6. When you're, 10 years old or a teenager, you need more sleep, not less than an adult. So we try to instill that with them, and obviously it's more challenging if their friends are up later, but they do it. And so all it is for me is being deliberate about calming my nervous system. No more checking email or Slack messages or work. It's listening or watching something that's calming for my body. I will often use binaural beats or a little vagal nerve stimulator when I'm reading for 15, 20 minutes or so in bed, a real book, no screens,
hmm
no EMFs in my bedroom, just real like alarm clock if I need it with a little wake light. So I don't like to wake to a siren. I like to let light wake my body. But now, truthfully, it's my body's trained. I always say go to bed within a half hour of the same time every night. If your bedtime is 10, then your window is 9:30 to 10:30. And if you want to wake up by 6, then your window is 5:30 to 6:30. And so I stay in that window. On the weekends, it's on the later side. And then on the weekdays, I do my best to try to get to bed by 9:30, knowing that I'm not going to fall asleep the second my head hits the pillow. I want to fall asleep within 20 minutes. So that gets me about 8 hours of sleep a night. And that's what works for my body. If you're in a healing stage, you may need 9 and you need to prioritize that. If you're more of an endomorph body type, then you might only need 7.5 or 7. But like that's really the minimum for any human.
Right. Wow. Thank you so much. Thanks for sharing about what works for you, your routines, also how all your years of clinical practice are just expanding into this really helpful knowledge for folks. So we're glad to have you share with us today on Everyday Ayurveda, and we will put the link to the discount in the show notes, along with some other fun things that you have going on. Is there anything else you want to make sure people know about?
Just going back to the beginning, that no matter what someone's suffering from, it is at its base level a deficiency or a toxicity. And in Ayurvedic medicine, it is balancing the doshas and it is balancing the body. And that's what everything comes down to. Bring up your deficiencies, reduce your toxicities, and allow the body to heal. So, what the best practitioners do is they enable the body to heal, put in the position to heal, and the body innately knows how to heal itself. So, appreciate you having me on the show here today.
Thanks so much. One more thing before you go. If you've ever dreamed of studying Ayurveda at the source, join me in India next February for a 10-day culinary and nutrition immersion 2027. We'll cook, we'll study, and we'll explore Mysore together, and you'll come home with the confidence to make food medicine. Learn more and enroll at ayurvedicliving.institute. I would love to have you with us.